They let me pick. Choose whichever Spartan I wanted. Like the others, you were strong and swift and brave. But you had something they didn't. Something no one saw but me. Can you guess?
Ramen. Today's video is brought to you by Vite Ramen. Now, because I'm Vite Ramen's most favorite blessed noodle merchant, they don't even review my plugs or my videos before they go live, so they have no idea they're being attached to such a spicy video like they are today. So no hate. And I mean, how could you hate Vite Ramen? Not only do they take really good care of me over here at EckhartsLadder, but they are phenomenal people making a really great product. First of all, and maybe this doesn't matter to you, but it matters to me, Vite Ramen cares a lot about their employees. They treat people well, and they clearly care about the product they're making. And it shows because I personally love Vite Ramen noodles. Not only are they really low in sodium, but high in good stuff like protein and vitamins, but they also taste great. I recommend you purchase one of the flavor packs. That'll give you a few different options, but personally, I like the soy chicken flavor. Because Vite Ramen loves me so much, they have a customized EckhartsLadder landing page, which I've included down in the description. Make sure you use the code EckhartsLadder to get 15% off your next purchase. Plus, there are other goodies like a free chopstick and spoon. So thanks again, Vite Ramen. I love you. Now, on with the content. And today's video is a bit of a rambling one because I am talking about my favorite video game of all time, Halo 3. And I know what you're saying. Halo 3 doesn't make sense according to your title. It has some serious flaws somehow. And it is true. Halo 3, as we'll discuss in today's video, has some serious weirdness when it comes to story. But to me, it doesn't come anywhere close to ruining or even really diminishing the experience. I tweeted the other day that personally I have a sort of triumvirate of perfect games. Halo 3 is one of them, along with Mario 64 and Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So keep that in mind before you flag me with the dislikes down below. It's the same with Star Wars. Star Wars has lots of weird plot elements. It's got aspects that, if you look at logically, don't quite hold up. But as long as you enjoy the experience, I think it's not really necessary to overly dwell on it, but I do think it's interesting to discuss. So, what about Halo 3 doesn't make sense? Well, everything I'll be talking about today relates to the campaign, and the campaign has a lot of strengths. It's perhaps more than any other in the series, almost like a space opera. It's truly epic. It's basically non-stop action. You go to incredible places, including the Ark, which is my favorite place in the Halo universe. But in my opinion, when it comes to details and really coherency with the rest of the Halo trilogy, I think things do start to break down. As an example, I think the single greatest issue with the entire story is the fact that they did have to wrap everything up in one game, and at this point there were two discrete enemies, the Flood and the remaining Covenant. And the main problem with the Flood here is that by design they're almost an unbeatable enemy. I mean, the Forerunners lost a war against them and they were several orders of magnitude more powerful than humanity. But by the end of Halo 2, the Flood is in control of High Charity. There's a fully functioning Gravemind which has been reawakened and which is in control, and it has seemingly little opposition. So how do you stop something like that? Well, Halo 3 ends up choosing an option which it's hard not to call a cop-out. Besides for sending a single CCS class cruiser to Earth, at least from what we know, the entirety of the Flood species traveled to the Ark in High Charity. Now, this makes no sense because of how the Flood operates. The Flood would never be happy enough sending one ship to a single part of Earth. In reality, they'd be dropping off spores basically everywhere they went. It does make sense that the Gravemind would go to the Ark because they want to stop the firing of the rings, and if the rings do fire, you want to have at least a substantial Flood population outside of the superweapons range. However, it takes very little effort to actually, detach a couple of ships and just send them to Helios or other parts of Earth or just wherever. Now, admittedly, that may have happened. Maybe that's how the Flood will reemerge in Halo Infinite, but this is the problem with Halo 3. They're fighting an uncontainable enemy, one that's far more devastating than the Covenant, but which nonetheless ends up being contained nicely. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, if you get what I'm saying. Now, I'm not even suggesting that the lore hasn't come up with some reasons for why this didn't happen. I'm talking purely in the context of Halo 3 itself, and I do think that it's such a weird plot hole that it's hard to really suggest suggest any explanation, especially given the fact that humanity and the Covenant both seem to be at the precipice of defeat and victory. So yeah, maybe the Covenant somehow managed to maintain a blockade around High Charity, but given what we see happen to their forces, don't think it's very likely that that would actually happen. It's implied to be sort of Cortana's plan. She says that there's a solution through the portal which will help remove the flood without firing the Halo rings, and I guess this is meant to be a way to sort of coax the Gravemind into following humanity. But even that is a really big leap. We have to assume that Cortana knew about the Ark, she knew exactly where it was, she would know that Installation 04 was being replaced there, that all of the flood would follow Chief to the Ark, that Chief would rescue Cortana, and that the Index would still work on the new Halo. All in all, I mean, it's just a really convoluted way to deal with the threat that got a little too powerful for each faction's capabilities. Like, I'm not even sure how she would have found out what was through the portal and where the Ark was, and then we have to deal with the fact that High Charity itself also somehow gets to the Ark. And again, that has been explained by the Gravemind injecting some precursor technology into High Charity's slip space drives, but I mean, just listening to that explanation, you must know it's not very satisfying. So I think that plot thread is sort of indicative of how messy Halo 3's plot is generally, but again, I don't really care as much because it is so exciting, and I almost like the fact that it is a little bit corny. However, the story itself is not quite as tight as Halo 2 or Halo Combat Evolved, and that sort of ties into my other pretty big issue. The fact that a lot of what's done in the campaign seems mostly done to sort of just get characters to where they need to be, just so that they can tie up their stories. I mean, a really good example of this is with Keyes and Sergeant Johnson. Now, for me, this isn't really a complaint, but it's one that I've seen before. Why does Keyes go in herself to try to rescue/kill Sergeant Johnson? I'm not sure, but it's cool, and we get to sort of see the end of her character arc, I guess. But like, let's talk a bit more about that sequence. For one, it's kind of disappointing that the Gravemind couldn't summon its giant tentacles before the Halos were about to be fired. I mean, it's a really cool gameplay sequence where the Halo arrays are almost activated and you have to team up with the Flood, but then right after that you have the massive tentacle crashing down through the window. And on that note, it's very clear that the Prophets are going to try to fire the array and that humanity is really the only one that can stop them. Why are the Flood actively trying to stop them until they actually reach the Citadel? And if he is going to try to kill them, well, why does he rely on those two Flood combat forms instead of just, crushing them with its giant ancient flood tentacle thing? It's a sequence that is just amazing, and when you play through it, you're kind of just like, yeah, this is cool, I know basically what I'm doing, but then when you actually look at the details of the thing, it sort of falls apart a little bit. And I think that sums up really the majority of my problems with Halo 3's script. Problems which, again, are less important to me than just the sort of set pieces and the themes and the feeling that you get when playing the game. I will say too that Halo 3 does feel like it sort of just ignores a lot of Halo 2. I think even the beginning is pretty indicative of that. Master Chief sort of just jumps off the Forerunner key ship. We don't really get a whole lot of detail about his journey. Obviously that is filled in otherwise, but it is sort of jarring to go from Halo 2 to Halo 3, if you know what I mean. But that's all I have to say about what is my favorite game of all time. And I mean, this is a very appropriate time to talk about Halo. We've got the Halo Infinite sort of trailer and gameplay showing off and whatever else in just a few days, this Thursday. And I will be doing a live stream of the Microsoft press conference over on my second channel, X2, and I'm sure we will be talking about it later. I've also been playing a ton of Halo 3 multiplayer because it's still really enjoyable, and I'm also doing a campaign playthrough of the game on Legendary Co-op, so if you want to see all that, again, you can check the link to my second channel. I'll put it in the description under the Vite Ramen stuff and also in the upper right hand corner. Anyway, thanks to Vite Ramen once again for sponsoring today's video. Make sure you go grab yourself some nudes if you're interested. And until next time, guys, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.